Okay, good evening to you all. Good morning to some of you, good lunchtime to some of you, and if you're in Asia, good very early morning. So it's wonderful to have you all online tonight. And from my perspective, I'm joined by a good friend of mine, Pedro, and we're going to have a fascinating conversation in terms of his journey and what he's been through and the lessons he's learned in terms of where we were. I really ask you tonight. We're going to have an engaging session. The idea is not to have loads of PowerPoints and everything else, and rather to get much more into a Q&A and ask lots of questions. However, I did want to share something that for the last 3 days, myself and the team have been working with Roger Hamilton and his team, and they've got about 750,000 entrepreneurs around the world on a system called Genius U, and they've got these things called micro degrees. And we've been building a micro degree, which over the last 3 days, and I'm very, very chuffed to say we actually just won an award about an hour and a half ago for the best micro degree that was actually produced. So I chatted with the team and I chatted with Pedro and I said, hey guys, this is hot off the press. It's not even 100% finished yet, but I really wanted to share it tonight because I think we've come up with some stuff that's really interesting. And for those of you who know us well, you're gonna get something brand new because no one has seen this, no one, not even internally in the team. So just very quickly in terms of the process, we're going to run through the 8 steps to creating the wealth you want in your life. And then we're going to look at the 5 pillars upon which they are built. Then we're going to really, get into the conversation with Pedro and around what his lessons have been. And then we're going to get into a Q&A. And, I tend to joke with people, but, hashtag ask God anything. Our 3 core values are trust, transparency, and alignment. So we really do ask, ask us whatever you want. I tend to joke, and I'm sure Pedro won't mind either, where the harder questions are the fun ones, not just the rote learning stuff. So before I go any further, can I confirm, are you guys seeing my screen with the 8 steps, with Pedro's picture, and are we all good, sound clear, and everything else before I move on? Pedro, can you hear me clearly?
Yeah, I can hear you clearly.
Are you seeing the screen?
I am indeed.
Okay, spot on. So let's get into a bit of a roller coaster here. And what's interesting for me is that, again, if you've heard us talk, we talk a lot around poverty and income inequality. And this is just some of the stats that I literally found today. 82% of the wealth created last year, so in 2017, went to the richest 1%, while the poorest half of humanity got nothing. Now, some of you might be sitting here thinking that you are the 1%. And if you want the table, I can share with you the table. So just type in there table, and we'll share with you the table where you can determine if you are or aren't part of the 1%. I have to say I was quite surprised. I'm not in the 1%. I thought I would be, and it's a little bit higher than I was actually expecting. Every single year, and it's just finished again, they go to Davos, which is a little ski resort in Switzerland. I was there in November, actually talking around the same topic. And every year they come back and they say one of the most important things on the planet is to fight wealth inequality. And if we don't sort it out, it's going to be one of the greatest challenges that this planet faces. An article came out right at the end of last year. It was a Credit Suisse report, and it showed that 1% of the world's wealth, the top 1% owns more than half of the world's wealth. And what was interesting is you can go into all the details here, but what was interesting is from 2000, so from 2000 to 2008, the 99% was actually increasing and they were sort of catching up. And by 2008, it was 42.5%. But then what happened since 2008 to now is that it's actually gone fully over the 50%. And the reason because of that is that the 99% are investing in different things from what the top 1% are investing in. So the 99% are trying to grow their wealth by working harder and getting paid more for their jobs. And or even if they're entrepreneurs, whereas the wealthy 1% are investing in assets, and those assets have appreciated faster than the inflation on income. The other thing that I think is really interesting is that down the bottom here, 3.5 billion people, which equates to 70% of the world's working age, account for just 2.7% of the world's wealth. And when you look at that graphically, you can see here is the 70%. And the top of the pyramid is literally 0.7%, 36 million people in terms of where we are. When we look at the inequality, it's also across geographies. So you can see Australia down here, you've got England and Europe, and you've got America and Canada. And other than that, there's stark inequalities across the world. Now, this one will get a lot of women really excited. So less than 10% of billionaires are women, 90% are men. That's a pretty stark statement. And there's quite a lot of research out there. It is disputed, but I also have a report where less than 1% of the world's wealth is held by ladies. And again, as I say, it is disputed. This is a research I found today. So it's probably closer to 10%, but either way, it's well below 50-50. And then for those of you millennials, well, unfortunately for you, you weren't born in the right time. And your wealth as well is in a challenging situation that you really need to look at it. And then really you look at it, and some of you might or might not have heard this before, but we did this research years ago, and 49% of the world's wealth is held in real estate, and yet only 12.9% of the world's population has access to that real estate. And what I think is disgusting is that of that 12.9%, you and me and everyone on this call, that the statistical chance of us retiring wealthy at the age of 65 is less than 1%. And so we all work hard, we go to school, we go to university, we get good jobs, we pay our taxes, we invest, we save, and we get to 65 after trusting the financial industry, and 99% of us are going to fail. And so really for me, it's important that we really start to look at why and what we can do about that. What's interesting is when you look at all those people that are on the wrong side of the inequality curve, all of them have mobile phones. And this is where, for me, it gets exciting, because we've decided to change that. We've decided to help the 99% invest like the top 1%. We've decided to make investing as simple as a swipe of a finger. And our goal or our dream or our vision is to get investment down to as little as $1 per person per investment. Now, what's interesting is that people say to me, yeah, but $1 is not going to change people's lives. And I agree with them. But what it'll do is it'll change their habits. And if we change their habits, we'll change their lives. So I want to invite you on a journey, because what Pedro is going to share with you tonight, what I'm going to share with you tonight, might just open up a spark. It might just help you realize that there's a better way, and that you too have the opportunity to create the wealth that you want in your life. And so for me, what's interesting is that when you look at this graph, on the left-hand side, you've got adoption, and on the bottom, you've got growth. When you look at online education, there's been massive growth and adoption. But when you look at online investing, there's been good growth, but very little adoption. And so what we've done is we've married the two together. And that's where you've got both the education, which is why we're doing the webinar tonight, and the events next week. And you've got the online investment opportunity, and that ultimately builds trust. And that's where Wealth Migrate sits, in the top right corner. So I really want to share with you tonight. I'm not going to go into all the details. I recorded 13 videos and over 2.5 hours of footage. So I'm really excited to share this with you. And if you come to the events next week, I will be sharing with you how you can get the first access to this. But this is the micro degree that we put together. It's the 8 steps to wealth through real estate. So the very first video is an introduction. And
hi, my name is Scott Pickett, and I want to.
And I'm not going to bore you with that, but those are all the videos that we've put together. And then this is the degree that the micro degree that we put together, the outcomes that you'll get. So identifying and overcoming roadblocks on your wealth journey, getting proven wealth strategies and systems from experts, creating and implementing a personal plan to achieve the freedom you want, your connections and using this to your advantage, what it takes to get to the next level, creating and implementing your personal plan to achieve financial freedom, get started now to own your own global real estate portfolio, and most importantly, in my opinion, discovering your purpose, your impact on the planet, giving back to others, and having more fun. Now, what's interesting, if this is the first time you've touched us, I want to be very clear with you. This is not a get-rich-quick scheme. It's not a book. It's not even a course. There's no way to get rich quick. And let me be very clear, just in case you think that you're going to do this course and things are going to change materially. They're not. You have to change your habits. You have to change your understandings and your belief systems. And then you need to implement what the top 1% do. And this is inviting you on a journey so that you can create the wealth that you want in your life. So I just want to take you through the 8 steps, because really they're not that complicated. The first one is that you're going to take a WealthE test. Now, I'm going to share with you a bit of behind the scenes here, but there's 25 questions and 1 bonus, and then it's ultimately going to give you a WealthE spectrum. So you can see here, it's still in design phase, and we're going to get this built out just like Roger Hamilton's Wealth Dynamics test. The second step is understanding the 5 pillars of wealth. And it's really important, because when you look at this, and Pedro, this is the first time you're seeing this because it's literally being created in the last couple of days. But I just wanted to share with you some stuff that's really important because there's 5 facets or 5 pillars to creating wealth. The first one is your investment quotient, and we call that your IQ, and it's really the what. And it's all about your mindset and your knowledge, and the energy is wood. So it's a wood-based energy, and you can see it here. The second one is on the left-hand side, and it's really your systems quotient. So it's your SQ, and it's all about having personalized systems. It's your how, and the energy is metal. The third one is your who, and you can see that it's your connected quotient or your CQ, and it's collaboration and partnership. And you can see it's also energy. It's the energy is fire. And then your fourth one is your financial quotient. It's your financial investment in real estate. And that's your when, and it's your FQ, and your energy is earth. And then finally, the fifth one is your why. It's what gets you out of bed every morning. And that's your purpose quotient or your PQ. Your purpose and your energy is water. And what these 5 different pillars bring together in your wealth, because a lot of people think wealth is purely about money and how much money you've got in the bank, or maybe how many properties you own, or maybe even your balance sheet, but it's not. Wealth is much more holistic than that. It takes all 5 components into account. And what your WealthE test does is it helps you achieve the wealth you want in your life, and the energy there is spirit. And people ask me, why E? And I'd say to them, well, E stands for education, electronic, empowered, engaged, exponential, or enlightened. And ultimately, you can choose whatever word resonates with you, because this is your personal plan to creating the wealth that you want in your life. The third step is your WealthE journey. And I'm going to share with a lot about this next week, where the journey of an investor. And, I actually created this for the first time in 2009. And it's uncanny how accurate this is. And what's really exciting as well is it's uncanny now with the evolution of Wealth Migrate, how many more people can now participate in moving up the life cycle of a property investor. You then go into your GPS, and like a GPS, when you get in the car, you've got to be able to work out where you are. So you do your WealthE assessment as to where you are, and then you want to work out where you want to get to. And I've never done this publicly actually before, but I've shared my entire goal system. So it's what I call my SMART goals. I've got them for my life, for the year, for the quarter, for the week, and for the day. And all the systems that I use, I'm going to share. And so this is my life goals. You can see right through to 2037 when I turn 60. And you can see down the bottom, it's got financial, vocational, mental, family, social and travel, physical and health, and spiritual and contribution. Then every year I've got my SMART goals, which are broken up by the quarter. And again, you can see it daily, weekly, monthly, and then the 7 major areas. And then finally, I've got my quarterly review, where I go in every quarter and I review how I've done across the 7 different levels. And you can see my mapping systems that I use. So I'm going to share all these tools and techniques with people. And it's a combination of Tony Robbins and Hunter Strayer and Roger Hamilton and many other people out there that have had a significant impact in my life. I don't believe there's one system for everybody. And this is the system I've molded through 20 years of personal development. Step 4 is your flight plan. And just like when you get on a plane in a pilot, you've got to have a pre-flight checklist. So if you're wanting to sign up to Wealth Migrate, this will tell you all the steps that you need to do. And then we've actually got 3 separate micro degrees. So the one is for first-time investors. So if you're brand new, it'll help you. The second one is for advanced investors. So that's people that are looking to get into commercial. And then we've got sophisticated investors, and that's people that are wanting to invest internationally and own a global portfolio. Step 5 is getting started. So it's really simple. We've got a sign-up video, and anyone that does the course, we're actually going to give them a $100 voucher, so that really the proof is in the pudding and people will be able to take action. Step 6 is tracking the progress. When you're in an airplane and you're flying from Sydney to London, whether you know this or not, the pilots and the automatic tracking machine is constantly tracking the airplane to make sure it's on track. And again, I shared with you my systems and my SMART goals of how my wife and I track our goals from our budgets to our actuals and where we're at. And again, we're sharing all these systems. Step 7 is to follow the laws of nature. And this is all about, you can have anything you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want. And so it's sharing it with your friends, it's growing your communities and really, enhancing and adding value in the world. And then the last one is step 8. And, I fundamentally believe I'm 41 years old. I could die tomorrow morning. I've had some incredible experiences in my life, and I don't see the point of living, till I'm 70 and then thinking I'm going to go and spend money. And so this one's all about enjoying the journey. And there's a whole allocation that I learned from Clem Sunter and Hunter Strayer around, even if you've got a small amount of money, how do you actually break up that allocation? And again, I'm going to go through this in a lot more detail next week. So guys, and ladies, to finish it up, the world, everyone on this call has a smartphone. And really what we believe, by marrying together education and technology, we can put smart investing in every single person's pocket. And for me, that is extremely exciting where we're going. But I didn't want to steal the thunder. I just wanted to share with you the work that we've done. And literally in the next 2 weeks, that course will be completely finished, and you will be able to go through it. Now, I've just got as a matter of interest, you can type it in the chat box. Who would be interested in doing that course? Just call it the 8 steps. I'll be interested to see if people think that would be of value to go through. And obviously getting all the tools as well. Cool. So one thing that's probably going to amaze you is that a course like that would be sold for, probably hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. And I'll be interested to know, Pedro, what do you think we should make it available to people for?
You know what? I love education, and I'm a big supporter of it. And I know you are, because you've gotten bongi through school. In my opinion, I'd love to give it away for $0. But I think people appreciate things when they pay for them. So we'd have to add some value to it. And I'm not sure what that would be, but I think how about $99? It's a nice under 100.
We might get there with time, but you've hit the nail on the head. My intention is to give it away for free to start off with. We might monetize the WealthE test. It's going to be with the programmers for the next 2 weeks. And I'm working with Roger Hamilton on it tomorrow to really tighten it up. But yeah, it's going to be for free. And the reason being is that our mission and our purpose is to try and solve the wealth gap and empower 1 billion people. And we want to literally make sure that access to information is there for everyone. And the only thing that we would ask people is that if it adds value to them, then for them to share it with others. So without further ado, I wanted to move over to Pedro. And before I introduce Pedro, I wanted to say that I've just shared with you a little bit around what what I've been working on for the last 3 days with the team, and I'm super excited about it because there's a lot of sort of foundational knowledge that whenever I do live events, I've got to kind of sort of do the same thing over and over again. Whereas now that content's been digitally created, and what's exciting is that allows me next week to go deeper into different areas and to really focus. And again, if people have questions tonight, we're going to ask anything we can. But I'd also like people to really give me some feedback tonight as to what they'd really like to get from myself, and equally from Pedro's perspective. To introduce Pedro, I met Pedro, and he can tell the story from his side of the fence. But I met him a good few years ago. I remember he came to an event of mine, and again, I'd like Pedro to tell the story. And sort of he chipped away, and he didn't trust us like no one does, to start off with, because there's so many skellums out there and thieves and sharks, etc. And then he actually came on a buyer's trip, and that's when I really got to know Pedro. And I tend to laugh at him, and he's probably cringing because of the T-shirt I'm wearing, in terms of my dress sense. But he really has been. He became a friend on that trip, and I'll never forget how much he ripped me off because I had to beg on my hands and knees for him to help me with my fashion. But my point being is that he subsequently become a wealth partner in the organization. Just last year in December, he was training Jaco and I. And he's built an extremely successful business, but I'll let him tell us about that. But what was amazing, and again, this is that whole community and how you can grow as a community. He's got years and years of experience in the space that he's done, and he was willing to really help, Jaco and I take Wealth Migrate and the sharing of our knowledge to another level. So I'm really, really grateful for that, Pedro. And tonight I'm very, very inspired and grateful for you being online and sharing with everyone. So without further ado, I want to hand over to you as you share your journey and some of the lessons that you've learned on that journey.
Awesome. Would you like me to, do you want me on screen, or are you happy with just my voice?
I'd appreciate if you have got a webcam, then people can...
there it is. Am I on? No, there should be coming live.
There, well, we got you. Yep, you're live.
All right, good. Scott, thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to share. I'm excited to be part of Wealth Migrate, and as a partner, it's been an amazing journey. I think I probably was there as you were starting out, with Wealth Migrate. I came on the first trip. I think my story really is, bottom line is, I started out with a 9 square meter office, which was my second bedroom in my house in 1999. And we built that out into a over $3 million business. For those of you who are in the States, it's a 96 square foot office. As you know, you can't fit a single bed, never mind trying to walk around that to try and get some work done. But it was quite interesting. I burnt my fingers along the way. I still have a Detroit property that is burnt down and in a bit of a state. I have to fly to the States to go and clean that up.
Just for the record, anyone on this call, we did not help Pedro buy that Detroit property.
That's a fact. I bought that before I met Scott, and as a matter of fact, when I bought that property, it was doing 18% returns per annum. But you know, when things are too good to be true, sometimes, yeah, they are too good to be true. So it was a bit of a learning curve. I mean, we did well in the early days. I did well with that property, but over the time, I'd invested a lot of property in South Africa, and you know, decided to go overseas. We're sitting with some property overseas, and then I really kind of got involved with Wealth Migrate, and I love the idea. I actually got rid of everything in South Africa, and I'm in the process of getting rid of Detroit. It's a lot easier, it's smoother, there's less problems. The tipping point was when I got a call from an accountant tenant I had, who said to me, "Please, could you come and screw in a light bulb for me?" And here I am, the CEO of 5 companies, at 7 o'clock at night, getting in my car and going to this guy's house to put in a light bulb in his shower. And I just thought, that's it, I'm out. This is just not for me. There's just no ways I'm going to be doing this. So yeah, it was, you know, it's been an interesting journey. It's been loads of fun. In 2012, I was in Atlanta with you guys. You know, having spent some time not only with you, and you know, I do admire you a lot, as you know, Scott. You're a man who says what he means and delivers on what he says. Henny Bezadinot, who's obviously part of Wealth Migrate, and Dolph DeRoos is another mentor that I read a lot of his books and got to meet. Really amazing people involved in this business, which has been awesome. So for me, it's been an awesome journey with you guys. And real estate for me is where I've sort of parked my money and grown my wealth. So through the years, real estate has really been kind of the foundation of how I've managed to grow my wealth and get to where I need to be.
Tell us your story, Pedro. You know, you sort of jumped over it in terms of the 9 square meter, your bedroom basically, and then building the business. What is it? What is the business you do? How did you grow it? And explain a little bit more both the business component, because I do a very similar thing where you got the business side, and you just flippantly mentioned you park your wealth in real estate. Just explain that dynamic and the growth and how you went through that.
So one of the things I don't like, and maybe having started in the 9 square meters or 96 square feet, was the fact that I don't like to pay other people rent. It's really, I don't like paying off their mortgages or their bonds. So when I gathered enough money within the first 2 years of having started the business, I bought a house that we operated from. So I went from, so I have this number within the business that I've shared with my guys when they join me. It's called, I call it the significant set of numbers, which is 9, 120, 210, 450. And that's kind of the size of the business. It's kind of, we've operated in real estate within that space. So we started in 9 square meters, we went to 120, we then moved to 210, and we're now sitting on 450, which is almost close on, I think that would be 5,000 square foot. And that kind of was the process, was sort of taking the money, moving it into real estate and growing the business by parking a lot of the money and paying off mortgages and our own space. We've got a very fortunate structure in South Africa where we can buy sectional titles, so that really helps from operating your office. You don't have to pay somebody rent, you can pay it to yourself. But as you know, in any case, when you stop paying rates and taxes to the government, you very quickly find out who owns the property. But you ultimately need to grow within that space and work within those rules. But it does pay off. And the great thing about having real estate is that you can leverage off of it in future. One of the things I did find out recently was when I went back to the banks after I'd sold all my real estate in South Africa and said to them, "Listen, guys, I need some money." They were like, "Oh, really? So show us what you got on your balance sheet." And it was a little bit more complicated, than it's been in the past. So I must say, having real estate on your portfolio adds a lot of value in terms of you being able to leverage more money from the banks. But the number one rule, and real estate 101 fundamentally, is kind of making sure that if you are renting it out, or if you are putting money into it, that every month you're left with some money in your pocket. It needs to leave you, even if it's $30 or $50 or whatever it is, it must leave you money in your back pocket if you're in real estate. That's a fundamental rule.
Tell me something. In terms of, again, another thing that you spoke of, and you and I are very similar to this. My wife and I have done the same thing, is that talk us through your journey. I'd invested in a lot of South African property over the years. I started in 1999, and I bought my first London property in 2002. And I suppose around, I don't know, 2010, 2011, 2012, what happened to me was the police came to try and arrest me because basically someone who worked for F&B in the mortgage department, and I ironically just happened to have a mortgage with F&B, hadn't been paying their rent for 4 months. So I figured, well, they've obviously got a security problem. They must keep getting robbed. So put a couple of extra security gates on the doors. And as always in South Africa, the law was with the tenant. And I actually just remember sitting back and contemplating that and going, this is so ridiculous. Like, I just don't have these problems in the first world. And that was the first step for me in really going, like, I just don't want this hassle anymore. And then the second step was when I met Henny and really started investing in now I know Dolph had been talking about commercial since I've known him, but I just couldn't get into commercial. So until Wild Migrate came along, it wasn't an option for me. But then once I started playing with investing with Henny and them in the commercial side, it was like this is just a no-brainer. Like why am I putting up with all this hassle? And over time, we just moved more and more money, selling the properties. We didn't have to fire sell them. We just sold them the moment we got the price we wanted and moved the money overseas. What was your journey in terms of that same process? Because I think you and I followed quite a similar journey. Like, I don't know about getting the arrested part, but
No, thank God I haven't been arrested for anything just yet. But I agree with you 100%. Residential is in different states, different places, different countries. It's a lot more complex because you can't just kick people out of the home they're living in. It does become messy. So getting into commercial is really the place you want to be, because one of the fundamentals in terms of commercial is that you're not going to get a phone call to change a light bulb, because the tenant is going to take care of that because they can't operate. They don't have lights. If the geyser bursts, they're not going to phone you to sort out the geyser because they need hot water. So from a commercial perspective, it's so much easier, and the tenants are so much more involved because it's where they operate their business from, and they need to get going, so they don't waste your time or theirs, and they get on with it. So commercial is great. So the big question is, how do you get in? It's like anything. You talk about it so often, and it's exactly the same thing. You got to buy the houses first before you can buy the hotel. It's monopoly. You speak about monopoly so often, and I always say the younger you can start learning how to play monopoly, the better, because fundamentally you've got to buy the houses to get into the hotel. But once you have, you can't go wrong, and commercial space is just a phenomenal space to be playing in. The great thing, of course, is with Wealth Migrate, you don't have to learn to cut your teeth on residential. You can go into commercial straight away at a very low rate, and that's the great thing about the system that you guys have built out and that we've been involved with, helping you in bits and pieces in little ways that we can. So it really makes a massive difference when you can just run and run with the big boys, run with the lions, as it may be, to use a South African phrase.
So it's interesting what you just pointed out. Then it's amazing. I've just spent, like I said to you, 3 days with people from all over the world, and it was amazing how the light bulb would come on for them, because previously real estate was just not available to the majority of people, and that was residential. And billionaires don't invest in residential. Like, what most people don't understand, and I'm going to go through this a lot more next week, but it's all about the mindset. So I ask everyone online tonight, if you invest in residential, do you invest, because of the great passive income that the residential is making you, or do you invest for capital growth? Just answer the question, and I'm going to actually keep quiet for 10 seconds so that you can think about it. Now, if you're honest with yourself, particularly those that own South African properties, they would be very aware that most people don't invest for income, because they actually end up chipping in on their bonds, and it's really about capital growth. But what's amazing is that you then go and do the work, and you actually realize that the top 1%, the wealthy people, capital growths are nice to have. Like, they don't even go after that. Like, they go after passive income. And amazingly, like, this light bulb comes on that people think they're doing the right thing, and they're actually like doing the wrong thing. Okay. And then they say, okay, well, how do I get into commercial? But until technology turned up and platforms like Migrate turned up, there was just no way to access it. So, it was all good and well for me 15 years ago going on courses with Dolph DeRoos on how to get into commercial. But with a 30% deposit, there was just no ways, to get in the game. And I think my point being, Pedro, I'm just emphasizing what you're saying, because it's just opened up a whole new world for people. Like, they can get into residential, they can get into commercial, they can invest in South Africa, England, Australia, America, and most importantly, they can invest like the top 1%. And if they invest like the top 1%, they're going to keep getting results, like the top 1%. For me, it's amazing when those light bulbs come on for people.
Yeah. Look, the one thing about commercial property, and that makes it complicated as well, is besides the big deposits you have to put down, you're also in for 10 years at a max. If you're lucky, they'll give you 10 years to pay it off. Banks at the moment, particularly in South Africa, I'm sure it's sort of similar around the world, are very tight. They're not giving out loans. After 2008, everybody got very, very nervous about giving out loans to left, right, and center. I mean, if you've watched the movie, the Big Short, I mean, strippers were buying, 110 houses, in Miami, which was quite fascinating. I mean, sure, they got cash, but it was quite an interesting movie. It was quite fascinating to see. But I think, Scott, you were asking about what it is that kind of makes made the leap for me, and one of the things that I talk about in the presentation that I'll be talking about next.
Sorry, mate. Just before you go there, and again, we'll go through this in more detail next week. But something that people don't understand, and I don't care how much money you've got, to try and invest overseas. So it's hard enough to get mortgages, like you just said, if you're local, so South Africa, England, Australia, America, wherever you are watching us from. But to go overseas and get mortgages overseas is like now on impossible. Like, I don't care if you've got $1 billion on your balance sheet, like, and you don't have a track record in that country, it's virtually impossible. And again, it's really important that by people coming together and partnering with people on the ground, that you then get access to their credit. And I mean, that was a game changer for us, where we were borrowing in the US at 9, 10, 12%, and now we're borrowing at 3, 4%. And it's a game changer. And I just wanted to emphasize what you were saying around mortgages. Sorry for cutting you off.
Yeah, and I think if you are, I'm not sure how many people are joining us that haven't done a lot of real estate, and thought about it too much. But to give that into context, I think for people is to say, in South Africa, in South African terms, if we were just talking about a pure residential property, if I was buying a house that I could afford that was worth R1 million in South Africa, it means you're paying 10% bond or 10.5% bond. At 3%, you can buy a house that's worth R3.5 million. That's what your affordability changes. It changes. I mean, those numbers just change things dramatically.
No, 100%. Now, tell us your journey in terms of that switch that you were mentioning before I cut you off.
So, one of the things that, and I'll be talking about it next week as well, but one of the fundamentals in terms of my philosophy in business is who will pay for it. It's a simple question. Whatever you do in life, whatever you take on, and I know Robert Kiyosaki often talks about doodads and all those bits and pieces, whoever's read the books. But fundamentally, if you want something, whatever it is, you got to think first about who's going to pay for it. And it filters through everything that I do in life, besides property and buying things and whatever the case may be. Even when I decide that I want to invest with Wealth Migrate, I never take money that's sitting lying around necessarily. I look at how I'm going to put money into Wealth Migrate, or how I'm going to even put a bum in seat. In other words, if I'm going to take on a new staff member to run in our business, and we've got about 70 staff that work for us, but even at this stage, and having worked as long as we have, after 18 years of being in business, if there's a bum in seat, if someone's going to come and occupy space in our office, we need to know who's going to pay for that person to be there. So I always go back to the basic philosophy of who will pay for it. So I got to get a new client. If I'm going to get a bum in seat and my staff come to me and say, we need somebody to help us, we're not coping in this division or that division, I'm like, great, who's going to pay for it? It's not coming out of my budget. And that's how you grow it. And fundamentally, then you've got the extra money to be able to put into real estate and things that will sort of look after your wealth and then grow the wealth at the same time, which is what Wealth Migrate's really good at doing.
Yeah. So now let's open it to the floor. If you've got any questions that you want to ask myself or Pedro, again, you were also starting to talk around your thoughts of what you want to share next week and some of the stuff. So I'll wait and see in terms of some of the questions. If people want to send questions, I'd love to sort of get some intake. And if there are no questions, I've got lots that I want to ask. But I wanted to just, what's your take next week in terms of, I've shared a little bit around where I really want to go. And just by the way, guys, in the chat group, you'll see there that there's actually a link if you want to come next week. And for attending tonight, live, you'll actually get a 30% discount on the tickets. And we're basically doing that. If you're a wealth partner, you're getting even a bigger discount. But my point being is that we're not an events company. We don't make money out of events. It's purely covering the costs of the venue, etc. But we're really keen to share next week with people. And I know you mentioned to me yesterday, Pedro, you've got a couple of things up your sleeve. So what are you looking to share with people?
So I'll be talking a little bit about how we got started. So I'll be talking about our sort of numbers that I said. We'll also be talking a little bit as to why I got involved in communication, which is what we're involved. We're a media company. So I'll be sharing a little bit about what we do, why I chose that as a So I'm not sure. One of the questions I was curious to know is how many people are startups that are coming to join us, or the people that are going to be entrepreneurs and starting out, and wanting to start out their own business. And fundamentally, it can be young or old. You're never too old to start out on your own. But don't make the same mistakes we did, because I know you and I have made mistakes along the way starting out businesses.
I've made more mistakes than I've had successes.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it. Yeah, that's part of the journey. But if you can learn from people who have done it, it's always great. So that's one of the things that I'd like to know, if there's anybody that's going to be out, and we can share a bit more of that. And then kind of how then I took a lot of the money that we made and put it into real estate, and how then I grew the real estate part of my life and the portfolio that I built out. I think one of the things you said earlier was, there's no quick fix, and that, every overnight success takes 10 years. One of the rules I talk about every time I've started a business, and I've started a couple, and as you said, some succeed and some fail. There's a reason why 90% of them are successful, fail, and there's only 10%. There's the 9-1 rule. For every one business that's become successful, there's 9 that have failed. And the reality is that you've got to stick out a couple of things. Like the 25% rule, especially when we're starting out a business, and maybe we still do that up to today. Is as partners, I have a partner in one of my businesses. We only take 25% of the money out of the business as dividends at the end of the year, because cash flow is king. As a matter of fact, I have a very cool saying that I picked up recently, and I'm not sure if you've heard it, Scott, but I'm happy to share it. I actually have to go to my notes. I saved it actually on my notes. I'll be sharing it again when I'm there, because I think it's absolutely brilliant. and it talks about, turnover. Turnover is vanity. Have you heard this one? Turnover is vanity.
Who said it before?
Profit.
Who said it before? I can't remember who said it.
I actually can't remember. I heard it from a good Jewish friend of mine, so it's quite apt. I mean, he's a great guy. He said to me, turnover is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash flow is king. And he's 100% right. Taking 25% out of your business and retaining the rest so you got cash flow for a rainy day is vital. And it is a slow process. Every business needs 2 years to mature. You only really start to make money after 5 years, and in 10 years' time, you better make sure that you're, changing your business, because that lethargy kicks in. You become lethargic at 10 years, and you've got to make sure that you're reinventing your business. And as you know, I'm sure you've read the infamous book that talks about Kodak and how the industrial age took 75 years, and now we're on a 15-year life cycle for all the new digital companies. So every 15 years, companies will be going out of business in the next couple of years.
To add to that, something I highly recommend. But I went to Business Mastery with Tony Robbins, and he said something years ago in 2010. I mean, we were right in the heart of the crisis, and he said there's only two things to business: marketing and innovation. It was quite interesting. I know there's plenty of people online that would agree there's probably other things that are more important. But he pretty much said the reason you've got those 15-year life cycles, etc., is because you've got to keep innovating, and also if the world doesn't know about it, doesn't matter how good your product is.
Yeah, that's true. You got to go to market. This is one of my slides that I'll be sharing. I don't know if you can read it, but it's another great saying I heard the other day, which was, if your clients are ahead of you in technology, you're 6 months out of business. You'll be out of business in 6 months, 6 months from closing down your doors. And that's true. And today, technology is moving so quickly and it's so available. I mean, if you consider your business is, it's changing the way people are investing their money. And why do you want to be paying so many fees to everybody when you can invest in a business that's going to give you a true return on your money? What you see is what you get. So technology is changing things drastically.
Pedro, I think when we have our next WealthE weekend, there's going to be a couple of team members that are going to be very upset with you because you're just giving me an excuse to go further into the future.
So go, Scott. I back you 100%.
There's a question here from Pierre, and he says, at what stage did you fully trust WealthE Migrate to be able to invest for them? What happened to make you do this? So basically asking about the trust cycle you went through. Maybe you could share with what it was like when you went to that first event, etc.
100%. Look, so I've been in the real estate space. I bought my first property. Is going back's always the easiest way to talk about where you go, where the turning point was. But I bought my first property when I was 27, and that was the one I was living in. And very soon after that, bought my neighbor out, and so sort of grew. And then realized that I needed, as I was growing my portfolio, I decided that I needed to go overseas. I had been following Scott, funny enough, since the early 2000s when he started out. He's a little bit younger than me. And I was watching this startup and this guy that was quite cocky and cheeky. And I watched it, and I saw a few of his emails come across my desk. And then I lost track of him. And then out of the blue, I saw that he was doing some international stuff, and it just coincided with what I was looking to do. Fundamentally, Pierre, the bottom line is that if you're going to make an investment in anything in life, trust but verify. And at the end of the day, if you don't put the time in and the effort, and Scott said earlier, no quick fix, it's exactly right. I packed my bags, got on a plane with them, and went to see what they were doing. And not only did I go and see what they were doing, I actually took a week before that and went with them to go and see when they were meeting partners on the ground to find out what they were going to do next. And they were figuring out what they were going to do next, and I was going to check on them to see what they were going to get up to. And only that way, it really helps. So coming to these webinar, getting on the webinars, but coming to the workshops is massive, because you're getting to meet Scott, you're getting to meet the guys in real life, and you get to understand, you can only lie to people for so long, and then people will find out who you really are. So fundamentally, you've got to come and actually experience the workshops, come talk to the guys, and if you can, ideally go on a trip with the guys. If you can go on a trip, if they give you the opportunity to go and check it out. Go and see the actual buildings that are being invested in, so that it's due diligence. You've got to put the time in. By the way, Detroit.
Sorry, yeah. When you're done, Detroit.
Detroit, just as a matter of interest, I went and met the guys that were doing the Detroit properties. I actually flew in via. I was dating a gal in Los Angeles at the time, and on my way past from LA to New York, I stopped for a day in Detroit. I think my problem there was I stayed there for a day and checked the guys and checked a few of the properties. I should have stayed longer. And that's where I burnt my fingers, was I didn't spend enough time getting to know the guys that were there. But, it's part of life. They closed down. The tenants had left, and they wrecked my place, really. It's been ripped apart. So I'm sitting with bricks and mortar without doors, really.
So sorry for laughing, but there's just too many stories that are like that. One thing that I think is also important, Pedro, is that when you got on an airplane and flew over there, the rules of the game were very different then as well. Whether you were buying a house, and to buy a house it cost $60,000 or $70,000 in cash, and then you still could get mortgages, etc. Then it makes much more sense to get on an airplane. But now with the platform and with technology, you can dip your toe. You can literally dip your toe with a voucher with $100, but the minimum investment's $1,000, and you can really dip your toe. And I tend to say to people, there's nothing better than actually track record. So you get started, and then you actually see whether the returns materialize. And it's cheaper than an airplane ticket to fly to America or England or Australia.
Yeah. Look, that's the truth. I mean, the reality is, at the end of the day, and just referring to Pierre's question, it depends on what you're going to invest. I mean, obviously. So if you're investing, a substantial amount, make sure that you get on a plane and go check it out. But you're right. You can test the system. The great thing is that digitally, there's also the group that we have, the Digital Buyers Trip, that Michiel and Yaku and them go and do the buyers, and then they share the videos, and you actually get to see the bricks and mortar with the potential properties they're looking at. You can check out the due diligence that's been done. You've made investing so simple that it's actually crazy. I mean, sometimes it is hard to believe, but it's a fact. But if you also look at the returns are spot on. They're exactly the kind of returns that you're going to get, if you go and do the homework and you put the time in. But you're doing all of that for us, which is really great. So it makes it really easy to invest. The truth of the matter is that if you're going to go and invest in any property, the 18% was ridiculous in actual. I mean, it was too good to be true. And I made money for a short while, but it didn't last long enough.
So tell me quickly, in terms of there's a couple more questions here, but just before we go there, in terms of what you said around you've made investing easy. One of the challenges that I found, no matter where I go in the world, is people go when it, what you pretty much said around Detroit, when it sounds too good to be true, it is. Just explain that a little bit, because you've walked this journey, and I had a young guy once who was in his late 20s, and he says if he doesn't sign all those forms, like when he does an Investec thing or an Old Mutual or Sanlam, unless he signs all those forms, he doesn't feel like he can trust it. And the fact he can do it in a couple of minutes online now, it seems too good to be true. What's your take on that?
I'm not a big fan of RAs, and I'm sure there's a couple of friends of mine that work for Investec and Liberty and all the rest of it, and they'll hate me for it. But the truth of the matter is that the reasons you're signing 100-page forms is because they're covering their asses. It's not to cover yours. Let's start there. I mean, the guy. I haven't seen an insurance company that's not making big money, and they're looking after their pockets first before they're looking after yours. And every time, I mean, up until recently, I haven't cashed out any of the RAs, but there was a time where I'd matured on some of those endowment policy things. I got to tell you that every single time, and I did it twice in my life, and every time I cashed it out when it came to maturity 5 years later, I was percentage down on the money I put into the endowment policy. So I got out less than the money I put in. I would have been better off putting my money in the bank and leaving it there and doing nothing with it, doing absolutely nothing with it. I would have been better off than the money that I put into any of those, any of those companies.
Yeah, well, I mean, if anyone's read, my book, and if you haven't, Property Going Global, you can just type in there Property Going Global, or PGP, and we can send you an ebook. But I did all the maths, the same thing when my father died, Pedro. And it's actually what really motivated me and made me quite angry, quite frankly, and really sort of determined to try and solve this wealth gap and to allow, like I showed earlier, the 99% to invest like the top 1%. There's a question here which is from Sean, asking around your media company. You want to know the name. So I don't know if you want to mention it.
Sure, it's Magos Media. Magos Media.
Okay.
If you go online,
I want to check in the chat. So you can go in the chat. Like I told you, there's the link there to the 30% discount in terms of what is happening. Another question, Pedro, that we get asked a lot is, investing overseas is incredibly scary. I don't care how much money you've got in the bank. So most people, when they bought their first house, it was an incredibly scary moment. And thinking about going overseas is equally as scary. Again, you can have $100 million in the bank, and when you invest in a new country, it feels like that first time you're investing in your house, back when you were younger. Talk us through sort of the nerves that you went through, and equally, I'd like the other side of the fence, which is what I've experienced and what I've been so privileged to share with thousands of people. But once you're becoming a global citizen, and once you've kind of got overseas assets and earning a first full income, what that feels like. Because I kind of want to share with people that it feels very scary, but once you do it and dip your toe and get to the other side, it's well worth it. What was your experience in that journey?
So when we came, when I came to visit with you guys and went on the tour, I got to see a lot of the houses. So funny enough, just to say, the only residential property I have is the residential property that's not in South Africa. We actually own a property through what we bought through IPS, right? And I bought that through Scott and the guys in I think it was 2013. We did our first purchase with you guys. So it was sort of October, November 2012. Came on tour with you, had a look at the properties, videoed them, took photographs, spoke to the partners down there. RJ was the guy we were dealing with at the time. Got to understand. We went out for dinner, tried to get him drunk so we could hear exactly what he was on about, but he wasn't having it. He's drinking his green juice. But it was good fun. I mean, it was awesome, but you learn a lot by being in people's company and understanding who people are. It's very nerve-wracking when you're going to take your money out, especially when you're paying rands into dollars at an exchange rate of 11.5 that it was at the time, or 12. But you're not going to be taking money that you can't afford to put into an investment that you're not sure of. So you've got to be able to afford it. You've got to take a risk sometime. Real estate is probably the least risky investment because it grows and goes down at a very shallow rate. It grows. It's not Bitcoin. It doesn't bounce up and down and go all over the place. So the bottom line is, it was a difficult decision to make, but once you've made the decision and you've gone with it, you've got to trust it, and then you've got to wait to see what happens. And that's, the great thing about having real estate is that it's still bricks and mortar. It's going to have a value no matter how you look at it.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, it was a fascinating experience the first time I went with, I don't know if it was the first time, but it was in America. It was Henny, Dolph DeRuis, Alan Carnock, and I'll never forget, we were sitting there with the sellers, and I got a PhD in commercial real estate in 2 hours, the way they were grilling those guys. And I mean, they literally wiped off $2 million off the purchase price by just the questions they asked. And that's when I realized as well, the value of partnership is that you don't have to learn it all the first time yourself. You can partner with people and learn while doing. And for me, I find that extremely powerful. I'm not talking to anyone on the webinar tonight. I'm talking about me, myself, and the impact that had for me, you know. One last question. Let's look through here quickly and see if there's any others that have come through. Okay. Not sure why, but I don't see the link to the 30%. Okay, let me try and sort that one out. So guys, you know, the intention of this webinar was really just to share the exciting coursework that we've been doing and to get a little bit of a window into Pedro and what he's doing. Like we said, you know, he's going to be available next week. I want to share with you. Hang on, I just want to answer. I can't do two things at once. Let me answer that question quickly. So I will put the link in the chat box and I'll send it to everyone. So it should be in the chat box as well. So I'm going to go back to sharing my screen again because I just want to share something that's important here. Give me 2 seconds. Where's it gone now? There it is. And go back to sharing my screen. And what I wanted to share with you quickly was we've got a webinar on Thursday evening. So at the moment, the team is really is ensuring that I don't have a social life. But we've got another webinar on Thursday evening, and it's with David Orban, and it's on how is blockchain, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things going to come together to change the world. He's one of the most recognized people in the world in this space. He's a venture capitalist out of both Italy and New York. He's a faculty member of Singularity University, and he's also a global authority on blockchain and crypto. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, blockchain is going to have a bigger impact on your life than the internet has over the last 20 years. So I highly, highly recommend that you start to understand it. And you'll also get a better understanding of how we are marrying together real estate and technology using blockchain. And then we're really excited about next week. We've got speakers like Clem Santa, we've got Pedro, myself, really coming to share with people in terms of we've had such incredible feedback, you know, from the events that the teams put on. And so on the 20th, it's in KZN, so that's in Durban on Tuesday. It's the 21st in Johannesburg, and it's the 22nd in Cape Town. So that's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday next week. They are all-day events. So the feedback, they start at 9 in the morning and they finish at 4. The feedback we've had from last year is that people would rather take the time. You know, you're talking about your family, you're talking about your wealth, you're talking about plan B, a peace of mind, and most importantly, wealth preservation. And if someone can tell me if Zuma has resigned or not, I'd like to know, because someone's telling me that he has, but there's nothing on News 24, so I don't know if it's fake news. But my point being is that it's really kind of staying in touch. You know, we're living in tumultuous times, and the only way to survive in tumultuous times is to have the right knowledge. And the only way to have the right knowledge is to be around like-minded people and really be at the cutting forefront of what is happening. And then you tend to move from a place of survival to a place of thriving. You know, and again, the ticket prices are inconsequential. We don't do these events to make money on the events. We do them to share the knowledge. Then just to let you know, in March, the same events, the Fintech, exponential technology, and crypto investing, we're going to be doing in Seoul, Manila, Tokyo, and Puerto Rico. And we've also got events where David Orban is coming out to South Africa. So they'll be specifically focused on exponential technology. So next week is focused on primarily real estate and investing and the fundamentals of investment in real estate. And these in March are around technology. So Fintech, exponential technology, blockchain, cryptocurrency. And you can see there, Joburg, the 24th of March, KZN, the 27th of March, and Cape Town, the 28th of March. And then if you're a wealth partner, there we've got dinners with David. In Joburg, it's on the evening of the 24th, which is a Saturday night. In KZN, it's the 26th of March. And in Cape Town, it's on the 28th of March. And so, you know, I'm just giving you some forewarnings so that you can, you know, make sure that you attend that. If you don't know what a wealth partner is, they're a shareholder in the company. It's a group of people. There's 130 people from all around the world. Pedro's one, I'm one, David Orban's one, by the way, that are effectively our shareholders of the company, but we all have a vested interest in the growth of the company. So that's the real estate assets, the platform, the intellectual property, etc. But what I think is more exciting is the like-minded group of people and the purposeful impact we've got on the planet. And so if you are interested, just type in their wealth partner, and you know, it's the wealth partner dinners are an exclusive event. You know, we've spoken a lot about making real estate investing easy. You know, through the Wealth Migrate platform now, you can literally invest in a couple of minutes. You know, you get access to quality partners, you get access to good opportunities from as little as $1,000, or even in South Africa, 1,000 Rand, which is $100. You know, so you no longer have to deal with the hassles, the management issues, the complex global tax structures. and now it's just about the best returns. And the one thing I want to say as well, it's not all good. It doesn't always all work. And that's the beauty of partnerships. So, at the moment, the property market has changed quite dramatically in the residential development market in Australia. And, we're working very hard with our partners on the ground there, and Richard Dunn, who's our frontman guy to solve that problem. And equally, Cyprus, which is based in, it's a multifamily in America, it had a dip in the first 2 quarters of last year. And we effectively put a SWAT team in place. So did they, our partners, the PPA group. Michiel and his team flew over twice. And what's lovely now is we're seeing the occupancy really start increasing. So please understand, it doesn't always work. We've got some amazing track record stories, and we're really excited about our $60 million portfolio sale, where all the investors are going to make really good money. But it doesn't always work. And the beauty in life is it's not what you do when it's working, it's what you do when it's not working. And I think that's the strongest thing, when it comes to partnership. So you can see all the contact details here. If you want to go to the platform, sign up. It's wealthmigrate.com. If you want to understand more about WealthE, which it's our cryptocurrency, which is based on real estate. We'll be talking about that on Thursday evening, but it's wealthe.io. Jason, who's our head of, the global team in terms of helping, the investment consultants, helping people understand what the opportunities are and how to go through it. You've got all of Jason's details there, both his email and his mobile number. And then you've got access to, the different YouTubes, Twitters, Facebooks, etc. In terms of the process. So I see there's a whole bunch of questions that have come through. So let me leave that slide up and see if there's anything else that I need to go through quickly. Not sure, I can't see the thing. So I've sent that, Francis. Can only individuals invest, or can legal entities like companies also invest? So Vickers, that's a good question. On the platform, it's been designed for individuals to be able to invest, just in terms of the UX and the process flow. But the team can certainly assist you in terms of investing through an entity. A lot of our investors invest through an entity, including myself.
Bless you.
And that's about asset allocation and asset protection. There's quite a few people saying thank you very much, Pedro, for sharing. So if you enjoyed it, I really hope that you come next week, because he's going to go a lot deeper. And then there's another question here, Pedro. For young South Africans starting out in property investment, would you recommend a property locally to rent out, or would you advise him rather to put his money into the offshore Wealth Migrate options? So the first thing I'm going to say here is Pedro doesn't give financial advice, and neither do I. All that him and I can do is share from personal experience. So if you're not comfortable in answering it, you don't have to, Pedro. But I don't know if you want to answer that question.
Look, like you said, I'm not a financial advisor. All I can do is say what I've been through and what I've done. And if you were to invest in residential in any way in South Africa or anywhere else for that matter, I would highly recommend that you do the numbers carefully. And when I say do the numbers, if you're starting out, you'll probably look at an apartment or a townhouse or something similar. Remember, there's levies involved. There's rates and taxes. You've got to include those. And you've got a good chance that there's going to be 2 months you're going to be sitting without rent every 12 months or every 24 months, depending on when your tenant decides to leave. You've got to factor that in. So when you do the numbers, make sure you factor those in. And when you're getting your rent, make sure there's something left in your pocket. If it doesn't leave you a cent in your pocket, walk away. Don't make the offer. You've got to make the offer only if it makes sense. And in the area that I'm living in Johannesburg, the agents here see me coming in, and all I see is this. For the longest time, I mean, I don't do it anymore. I don't go and look for property. But the reason they were doing that was because every time I walked into a property, I would ask them what the property price was, because they knew I was an investor. And when I was walking in to buy it, it had to make sense in terms of rentals. And I know the rental market in my area, so I know what rentals I could get. And the other question is, I'd ask the agent what they could get as a rental if they sold me this property. And that's the most fundamental question to ask the agent when you're buying. So you want to make sure that your offer is going to be low enough for you to have the rental on a monthly basis that leaves money in your pocket. But to be honest, there's somebody who takes very good care of you, and that's Scott. You don't have to worry about going and negotiating. You can take a little bit of money and make sure that you're getting your return every 3 months. It's a no-brainer. But again, you've got to do what's right for you, and don't invest for capital gains because you're looking for trouble. You're going to get yourself. It's a bonus. That's really the cherry. To get capital gains is a cherry.
I just wanted to come back to a slide I shared right at the beginning. I've built this micro degree on the 8 steps with the team, and my commitment is as soon as this is finished, I'm going to build 3 further ones. And like I said already, what you've all just explained there, which is wonderful, is what we call the first-time investor. So we're going to explain everything, how to buy a house. Now, whether you invest through WealthE Migrate or not, I don't care. But it'll teach you all the steps, everything you just mentioned around rates and taxes and the questions to ask the estate agents. Because, a lot of people think that they're on, the estate agents on their side. They're not. They're on the side of the seller. And then again, the advanced investors will all be around commercial and, everything around cap rates and IRR and all the complicated lingo that you need. And then the sophisticated investors, it's all around portfolios and global investments and global portfolios. So, if you are interested in that, just type it in there. I'd be interested to see what which one people want me to start with, because I'm going to do them in a sequential manner. And you'll laugh, Pedro, but I've been training people on this since 2004. And it was quite funny actually going through this exercise, going back through all my presentations back to 2004, and realizing firstly how far I've come in terms of the quality of presentations getting better, but more importantly actually realizing that the fundamentals don't change. Tax might have changed slightly, stamp duty might have changed slightly in different countries, but the fundamentals just don't change. And hopefully these courses will be of value to people. So I'm going to give one last chance to see if there's any other questions. Otherwise, I think we'll keep the best for next week.
Could I ask a question? I think if we could just get an answer from the audience, what would they be more interested in from my presentation, possibly on the week coming? Would they be more interested in finding out a bit more about entrepreneurship, or would they want to hear more about real estate? What would be more? Because obviously you'll be talking a lot about real estate. What would they like to hear more about? And if we could just get a few answers, just say real estate or entrepreneurship, and then at least we know what the split will be.
No, that's fine. So if you just want to type in the chat box there, if you're more interested in listening, the real estate side or the entrepreneurship. I think also, like we sort of done tonight, we're going to do it in more depth and more do sort of a Q&A and really sort of, I don't like going to events where I'm spoken at. I find them much more, valuable when we effectively workshop, which is where we work. So it's interesting. The majority of people are saying entrepreneurship. A couple are saying both, but it's very strong entrepreneurship. One saying, I reckon investing is a type of entrepreneurship. Both maybe more real estate. So very strong weighted on the entrepreneurship side, but also the real estate side. Yeah.
Cool. It just gives me a little bit of insight as to what you want to hear, and we'll weight it towards whatever you want to hear. So, but we'll give you. Hopefully, you'll walk away with a few things. If you walk away with 2 or 3 things from any workshop you go to that you can implement in your life, it could change your life. It's really valuable.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And there's a couple of people that also said the trust. So I think the example you just shared now on asking the estate agent questions, and even how you checked out, your Detroit partners and WealthE Migrate and everything, maybe go into your due diligence around trust. And then Wayne asked, real estate from Scott. So don't worry, Wayne, we'll be there together, and I will share as much as I need to. Obviously, with the course coming, people will also be able to get that information for free. So what I'm going to try and do is also go, a bit deeper and go into stuff that I haven't done before. I like the creativity side. So okay, so very strong on the entrepreneurship and the real estate. So I think I'm not sure if there's any closing comments from your side, Pedro, but I think we should save the best for next week and really be able to get into the detail. I remind everyone quickly, just while we're finishing off here, I just want to go back to that screen as to when they are. So again, it's we're in Durban on Tuesday, and we're in what is it now? Johannesburg on Wednesday, and we're in Cape Town on Thursday. And we'll bring some water for the Cape Townians as well. I'll bring you a 1 liter sparkling water. I'm joking. But yeah, just in terms of the dates and when it's happening, and I really look forward to seeing you. It's probably the thing I enjoy most out of what we do is sharing with people and watching light bulbs come on when they realize that wealth is in their hands and they can take control of their life, not just in local countries like South Africa or China or England or America, but when they realize they can actually invest in first world countries and passively earn first world income and can truly join that 1%. That's what inspires me. That's what drives me and gets me out of bed every morning. So I'm not sure any closing comments from your side, Pedro?
No, I think you've said everything. I'm very excited about next week. I'm really looking forward to meeting everybody and sharing the little bit that I have. Hopefully it'll help you along the journey. One of the things that I must say is you were talking about kind of taking responsibility. RJ, when he came to South Africa, I remember the first time he came, was saying that he's been around the world and every single country he's been in, and he actually showed us a slide, and when we were looking at the slide, we thought he was talking about South Africa, and he was actually talking about America. So everybody distrusts their government. Everybody doesn't know what to do next. Everybody's unhappy with the money they're saving, and it's a global issue. It's not a wherever you're living issue. You've got to take responsibility, and hopefully we can help you do that.
No, 100%. Someone asked me if we're live streaming it. I don't know. It's a good question. I know from past experience that particularly in South Africa, the internet speeds are useless. So the live streaming tends to not work very well. We will film it, and so people can watch it retrospectively. But I can guarantee you, the experience of being in the room with like-minded people asking questions is just it's 20 times better than watching it afterwards. If you are watching the recording, click on the link below, and you will get access to the event as well. And then really from my side, I just wanted to thank everyone for being online tonight. It's always an honor and a privilege to share. And Pedro, I really appreciate you coming online and sharing with people, your personal experience. It's really encouraging, and there's been really positive feedback from that. So maybe we need to do this more often with other wealth partners, where we get their knowledge and their wisdom. Because that's the thing that excites me most about our wealth partners, is that there's people out there that truly care about solving the problems for themselves and their families, which we're all entitled to, but they also care about having that purposeful impact. So I deeply appreciate your time tonight. Thank you very much.
It's a big pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Good night, everyone. Thank you for your time. Bye then.